Hey there, all you wondrous ones. This is Darren Austin Hall coming to you from Costa Rica. So I take a little sip of cacao and happy winter to everyone. Of course, where I'm at, it's like the opposite. We're seeing the end of the wet season here. The last few rains are coming down through what's been another remarkable rainy season here in Costa. It's been my second one experiencing kind of that version of winter. Everyone does turn a bit more inward here. The rains are super powerful and deep, and I've had a lot of time in the last little while to be more down south where the rains are strong and Mother Earth really pushes you into that introspective space. And I know in the northern climes where I hail from, and a lot of you are, it's a beautiful time of year, approaching the winter solstice. If you follow some of the seasonal activities, it's a very powerful vortex, rebirth of the light. For those who celebrate various holy days around this year, Hanukkah and Christmas, of course, there's a lot of time for gatherings. But of course, there's a lot going on in the world right now revolving around health and medicine and the pandemic still, and it's definitely sending a chill through a lot of people's lives. And I'm hearing a lot of really harrowing tales from people on both sides of that equation. A lot of distrust is brewing and a lot of antagonism. And it's tough to see. It's tough to witness these divisions being really driven hard and the impact that's having on people's lives in so many different dimensions. The impact it's having on the children, the impact it's having on just everyone's psychological health, really, and then, of course, the physical health as well. It's been really tough. And it's been also really hard to see that, there's certain slippery slopes that are occurring around the world right now with the onset of, tyrannical measures around health and medicine and, the vaccines and such. I had a really interesting conversation with some of my new landlords. I'm moving down south here in Costa Rica, and they're both vaccinated, and they came out a bit on the offensive when they heard that I hadn't been vaccinated. And I was really appreciative because it opened up a really powerful dialogue between us all where I just shared them, my reasonable perspectives on why I've chosen to not take the vaccine. My background in Chinese medicine and being an advocate for preventative medicine for years, and my suspicions of, the intentions of pharmaceutical companies and their track records. And it was wonderful because they heard me, and likewise I heard their fears, about they're on the older side of things, and they feel there's a lot of people who don't understand the science and aren't doing the research, and they're making very emotional decisions. And it was a breath of fresh air because at the end of the day, we really had some of the same needs. We both wanted to be safe. We wanted others to be safe. And we just had different ways of going about that. And to me, that was great. It was great to witness that. But it was hard to know, the next day I went over and talked to them, and they were shared, well, what are you guys doing come January when they're starting to implement the QR codes and the vaccine passports in Costa Rica, which they're doing in a kind of ambiguous way. Apparently it doesn't apply to tourists, but to locals and such, it's applying. And that definitely brought up, an edginess. And then, you hear stories like someone shared a story today about children in Germany in various schools are being, vaccinated children being brought to the front and applauded if they're taking the vaccine. And children who are not being bestowed such merit. And it's a kind of strange peer pressure, almost humiliation moment that's happening. And, you hear stories like that, and you hear stories about, the unvaccinated not being invited to Christmas and all these things. And it's just a quagmire right now, because then we look at the other side of the equation and we see, the vaccines are not as effective as people would hope they would be, and more boosters. And the hope is, how do we find a way that we can still foster our humanity through this all, a sense of human unity. And it's not easy. And I just want to share that what I've been really doubling down on, even tripling down on through this whole pandemic, is I've been going a lot more to the earth, to nature. And this is something that I learned, with some blessed time that I got to spend with the indigenous people of Turtle Island, or North America, First Nations people. And from there, I've had the blessing to sit with indigenous people from many different cultures all over the world. But one thing I learned from a lot of my First Nations teachers is that when things get heavy, we need to go to our true teacher, our truest teacher of our wisdom, which is Mother Earth. And that may sound new agey to some, but this is a traditional insight that comes from thousands and thousands of years of people knowing that when you go out to nature and you go out into the beauty of her landscapes and more of her raw energy, and you open up channels of communication, even just talking to a tree or just opening up your heart, breathing nice and deep and just letting yourself be, that it's no coincidence that people tend to find peace all of a sudden washing over their mind and their body. If they ask questions in their prayers, they ask for visions even, that answers tend to come. It's this kind of magical, miraculous quality that happens. And it's that relationship that a lot of my teachers said we need to really build in our lives. One of my teachers, Dave Crushane Jr., leading Earthman and Anishinaabe elder, he passed away this past week, and I just wrote a really moving tribute to him, and it's been amazing to see other tributes coming in. And I got to spend some really beautiful time with Dave back in 2012 when I did a rite of passage with him, and he guided us into this experience of being out in the land for 3 days in deep, deep rapport. And I continued to follow Dave after that. I was following him already, but after that really life-changing, momentous experience, Dave became a big influence and inspiration in my life. And one of the teachings that he just kept on hammering is that Mother Earth is the teacher of humanity. She's the true teacher of humanity. And in these trying times, when it seems so hopeless, when it seems like the world is spitting into tyranny, and it just seems like things are just being ramped up and up and up, and it seems like all hope is lost, those are times when we have to extend our prayers. We have to extend our prayers to the divine. We have to pray to Mother Earth. We have to deep dive into our meditations. This is a time where we're being really tested to be deep in our spiritual practices, deep in our humanness, and to just let the genius of our love shine powerfully. And lone wolfing it won't cut it at this point. There's just too much going on. It's too crushing. It's too soul crushing to witness what's going on in the world. And that's why you need to reach out to support each other. And you need to find your community. You need to talk and unburden with each other. You need to pray with each other. But you also need to bring in Mother Earth. And this is the invitation that I invite you to. Each and every day, no matter where you are. I mean, it's a beautiful time in northern climes to go out and take those wintry walks. Nature's so still right now. And it's important to take that time each and every day, as Dave used to say, each and every day, as if your life depended on it. Because in fact it does. And it does not just from the air you breathe and the sunlight that bathes you, and the water that you drink, all those beautiful earthly elemental things that really do constitute living. But it's also what happens to our mind and our souls when we acknowledge Mother Earth as a teacher of wisdom. We open our hearts to receive her insights. So I invite you, and I think a lot of these changes and a lot of these challenges are happening on the planet right now are to literally position us into this relationship in a strong way, in an unbreakable way, in a way that might even amaze and astonish us especially those of us who are from a more secular, materialistic culture where we haven't had so many supernatural, metaphysical experiences of maybe being in nature and receiving a message from an animal, or feeling those spontaneous bubbles of insights that can come from just being in the presence of Mother Earth a lot more than being in a human city where all of our constructs are the majority rule. And that doesn't mean you have to hike out to the woods, although if you can, I mean, that's amazing. And I really encourage people to try and center those kinds of experiences in their lives. But it could mean that each and every day you just take a walk to your local park down the street and you just sit, or you connect to a tree and you just be in that connection. As my indigenous teachers used to say, just go out into land and open up communication. That's humbly all you got to do. So I really invite you into that. And we need to do that because also there's parts of our species right now that are spinning the other way. You know, I saw recently this past week that Mr. Elon Musk had announced that his Neuralink program is going to be initiated next year, 2022. And if you've been following me, you know how much I like to jib and jive on transhumanism and discuss how this is a huge problem. Huge problem, and it points to a real impoverishment on our moral dimension, but also just speaks to the sickness of soul that happens through the disenchantment, which means our broken relationship with Mother Earth. Through that, we start to have this kind of strange self-loathing towards nature and ourselves. This idea that we need to be augmented through technology, that we are somehow horrendously flawed creatures of limited flesh, and we need some kind of AI salvation. In my opinion, that's just not right. And there's some real dangers in that. And we need to go back and look at the fragmentation of our divorce from nature, and how that was something that was touted by our religions. It's a very old wound, in fact, disembodiment. And that's why we need to rebalance that with a lot of people going the other way, which I'm seeing so preciously in places like Costa Rica, but all over the world. People are running from those techno-tyrannies back to the earth to realize that there's something we're missing. That as ingenious as AI technology may be, and all the other techie stuff that's going on right now with cryptos and NFTs and metaversing, which, you know, I'm not denouncing all that stuff in an absolutist way. I'm always trying to find that middle path, but I do put this dare to people to try and find that same intelligence that makes us so amazed by technology and nature. Because I know when I had my own spiritual awakening a long time ago, a lot of that was based on something called intelligent design, which was just witnessing that nature itself, both terrestrial and cosmic, is so incredibly complex, so profoundly well designed. Like, who created a tree? Just think about a tree for a second, and the tech that thing is. Creating air to breathe, cleaning carbon dioxide, being all the network of communication that trees do under the soil. All the many other splendorous things that happen just in the sacred ecology of the earth. What a grand symphony of just incredible beauty. And that's why a lot of scientists, when they dive into things deep enough, they meet that same awe that the mystic finds. And a lot of them become spiritual. People like Rupert Sheldrake, Irvin Laszlo, Fritjof Capra. There's a lot of amazing scientists who fell into mysticism just by going deep enough into nature to be blown away by that magnificent beauty that is inherently there. And right now I'm leading some men through a really powerful journey through the archetypes. We're present in the magician archetype, and we are in the age of magic. We are in the age of the magician, but the dark magician's been reigning for a long time, and we're seeing a beautiful rebalancing with the healthy magician coming forward, the magician that is grounding their expressions in technology and innovation in some kind of moral dimension, and in pulling on the lover archetype especially, and feeling a connection to the earth. If I was some kind of supreme king of the planet, I would say, hey, you know what? We all need to stop for a whole year and go out to the woods and seek some shamanic initiations and just spend time even just sitting on the land, meditating more, and just stop what we're doing. The last thing I'll share is one of the most fascinating things I found with the lockdown that happened in 2020 was at the end of the year. If you read my blog on my website, The Druid, I wrote my year in review, which I always do at the end of the year, and there was all these studies that came forward about how much the ecosystem healed during those lockdowns. It was if we saved the environment. We solved the environmental crisis by accident. And all it took was just stopping all that physical activity that we do, pressing nature into points well beyond our limits as we're prone to do. But there was a lot of healing that took place in people as well, just by stopping and letting nature run its course. One of the most fascinating things about nature is its self-healing. It wants to come back to harmony when it's allowed to rest. That in itself should be studied so profoundly by scientists. There should be such awe by every doctor and physician at that. And the fact that we have all these pharmaceutical drugs that push and pull and prod the body, there's no trust in the supreme healing powers of nature in modern medicine. And that speaks to the grave wound that on the whole we collectively distrust nature. And that's why we've convinced ourselves to be able to devastate and rape her so profoundly that we've pushed our ecology to a point where we can't even live here in the way that we used to. Some profound wounds there for us to heal, and I invite us all to do that healing just in the simple invitation of spending time each day in nature if you can. All right, I'm going to leave it there, but that's my prayer, that we all go out, center Mother Earth in your life, see what happens. My indigenous teachers would say, just find some little piece of wild somewhere in your life. Just open up a line of communication. Just be open enough to receive. I'm really excited to see what happens. Feel free to reach out and let me know if you have something profound that occurs. Sending you all so much love. Speak to you again really soon. Be glorious and mighty blessings.